is looking good. Yes, sir. All right. So, back at it again. Motivation with me, episode 2. Back at it again with the live stream. I'm also going to put all of these episodes in a playlist. So, if you can just click on the playlist and then you can, watch all the previous episodes. So we're back, motivation with me, episode 2. We are going to basically try to get further into this book. The book is You Are Awesome by Neil Pasricha. And basically, if you didn't hear on the last episode, this series is to help motivate as many people as possible. Just basically a good vibes live stream and, spreading the positivity, spreading the motivation, spreading the joy. And, everybody can, give their thoughts on, the topic or, the book I'm reading and, recommend other books or quotes or anything really positive or motivating that you think, could help anyone out there. So, with all that being said, we are back with this book, You Are Awesome by Neil Pasricha. This is the book. And once again, this is his Instagram and Twitter right there. That's what he looks like. And hopefully, in the process, I can actually, help out the author as well. And, you know, for me, it doesn't really matter how many people watch this series. I just want to, if anybody does happen to click on it, maybe they can get motivated. So, in the last episode, we talked about adding the ... And so what does that mean? Well, we actually talked about a couple things. I kind of jumped around the book a little bit. But basically, we talked about adding the ... to the end of the sentence. So what does that mean? So adding the ... basically, a lot of people in life, they get to a point where they're at like a wall, right? And so let's say, they failed at something and they just let it absolutely cripple them. And so basically, they're putting a period at the end of the sentence when in reality, they need to be putting a ... and just keep moving forward no matter, what bad thing happens. And so that's, adding the ... basically the premise of it. I went a lot further in depth, obviously, in the last episode. Um, I also talked about shifting the spotlight, which basically means instead of blaming yourself for everything, to just basically, not overvalue the situation. Like, don't, it's kind of basically about your perspective, if you put your perspective on one thing and, it's like when you walk into a store, you think everybody's looking at you. When in reality, nobody was thinking about you at all. It's like that saying, when you're 20, you care what everybody thinks about you. When you're 40, you stop caring what anybody thinks. And when you're 60, you realize nobody was actually thinking about you in the first place. So that's essentially what shifting the spotlight means. So basically, there are 5 more chapters or secrets, he calls it in this book. So this is every secret right here. I'll just let you look at that for a moment. Also, thank you for the 1 like. So now we're going to talk about the see it as a step. So we're going to flip over to the page. All right. So, secret number 3. See it as a step. Also, I just want to say before I start this, to anyone watching, if you're watching this in the future when there's many more episodes or anything like that, leave a comment down below, recommending anything like I said earlier. Just because, don't feel shy, recommend anything, because even if I don't personally like your recommendation, I will still check it out and I'll still, give it a chance. Because, it could help other people, A lot of different messages can help people in different ways because everyone perceives everything differently. Like I said yesterday, the same situation could happen to 3 different people and, they all take it a different way, basically. All right, anyway. So, secret number 3, see it as a step. Let's begin with Mr. Phoenix, the teacher. I'm just kidding, I'm not a teacher. So this is page 65, by the way, if you're reading the book with me. I met her at a Pixies concert. I was 24 years old, and we were with mutual friends, all shuffling and singing along at the back of a warehouse near the airport on a warm fall night. This is my favorite song, she screamed over guitar's wailing wave of mutilation from Pump Up the Volume when I was a kid. A couple loud parties later, we broke off on our own and had those slow and dreamy dates with long conversations, deep knowing smiles, and telling waitress after waitress, sorry, we haven't even looked at the menu yet. She ate ice cream for breakfast and gourmet pasta for dinner, an old soul with old values. She was completely at ease with herself, just as comfortable eating cold pizza off a paper towel as dressing to the nines to hobnob at a fancy holiday party. Confident and strong as an ox, she was a natural athlete who played on the 8th grade basketball team when she was in 5th grade. Shuttled from practice to practice, from team to team, she learned to be a team player, lose with grace, and eat dinner in the car. She had wanted to be a teacher since she was 10 years old. After getting her teaching degree, she joined the public school system, and since every student at her school suffered from a learning disability, she spent hours mastering the hygiene conversation, the protection conversation, and the what the hell do I do after high school conversation. A ring of keys jingling around her neck, plum-sized bruises on her thighs. She'd come home sweaty and sunburned after a volleyball game and spend evenings preparing math lessons, baking cookies for birthdays, or just going out to see her kids, as she called them, play baseball with their city teams on local diamonds. Fresh love fuels you like a drug and gives you energy you didn't know you had. After I left P&G, I didn't know what to do, so I started a sandwich restaurant with my dad in my hometown. I threw in some applications to go back to school, but I really felt I had to make a go of it. I wanted to prove to myself that I could be successful at something, anything. So after I locked up the shop at night, I would drive a couple hours through snowstorms to her apartment wearing my sticky, mustard-smeared t-shirt, smelling like cured salami and dirty dishwasher, but feeling on top of the world, even though I had to turn around and drive back a few hours later. But it was always worth it. She warmed me up with a greasy grilled cheese, and we put on mittens and went for moonlit walks around the tiny lake behind her place. Blurry blotches of wet snow coming down all around us. We trudged over a slippery river bridge between tall trees and held each other's mittened hands. Noses red and sniffling, eyes alive and twinkling, we stared at each other and kissed in one of those magical movie moments. After winter warmed into spring, after spring warmed into summer, on a less slippery bridge over a less frozen river, I proposed, and she said yes. Meanwhile, my restaurant had been sputtering. Some months I made money, some months I didn't. I spent too many Friday nights scrubbing toilets and burning brain cells with foamy oven cleaner. I felt like a failure all over again. I was having trouble zooming out of my struggles and shifting the spotlight away from myself. So there he goes, talking about shifting the spotlight, like we had mentioned yesterday. Also, thank you for the 2 likes. It looks like 0 people are watching right now, so I'm just talking to myself. But, like I said, it doesn't matter if 1 person's watching or 0 people are watching. I just want to help people. So, if anybody does end up watching this after the fact, when it's posted, like, onto YouTube, I'm hoping it can just help someone. So, I'll talk to a camera with 0 viewers. Anyway, let's see here. Anyway, continuing on page 67. When a letter arrived saying I somehow got into Harvard, it felt like a dolphin coming in to rescue me in the middle of the ocean. I grabbed onto its fin, sold my restaurant, and let it jump me through the waves to Boston to go back to school. We got webcams, long-distance plans, and frequent flyer cards to see each other every long weekend and holiday. We spent the year planning our wedding, and the next summer tied the knot under high blue skies on a sunny day in July. And then I left for my 2nd year of school. This time she came with me and tried to get a transfer to teach in a Boston high school, but never-ending paperwork problems left her handing out towels at the Harvard gym rather than finding a local batch of kids to teach and coach. She badly missed teaching, and by Christmas we agreed she'd go home and I'd follow with my degree a few months later in the spring. And when that next winter warmed into spring and I sat in a cap and gown in front of a stage in Harvard Yard listening to the commencement speaker, I couldn't stop smiling, because it really felt like I was finally getting my life together, and my wife and I were going to truly start our lives together. I moved home, I moved in, we bought a couch, we bought a house, We painted walls, we barbecued burgers, and we tried settling into the long, happy life we had first begun picturing on those slow, dreamy dates 3 years earlier. And even though we really wanted our marriage to work, sometimes heaven just doesn't last. I remember when I knew. There was a summer day we spent climbing a small mountain in the Adir- Adirondacks. I don't really know how to pronounce that. Um, anyway, in the Adirondacks. She had been gung ho all day on her hands and knees, scrambling up giant, flattened rocks, excited to stare into the tree lined horizon at every new lookout. I was always 50 steps behind, groaning about how tired and sore I was. She was thrilled with the adventure itself and loved the fresh air and sights and smells of nature. I was missing the 4 hour conversation I was expecting and spent my time swatting mosquitoes, scraping my knees, and worrying I heard bears behind me. When we finally collapsed in our hotel room that night, there was silence between us. I could feel something. I guess she could, too. Despite being together all day, we hadn't spoken much at all. How do you feel things are going with us? I asked softly, quietly, a bit boldly. I wanted her to pull the anxiety out of my stomach, to tell me everything was okay, to let me slam shut the little door I was opening in my brain, to help me out of the swirling sea in my mind that was telling me to brace myself for another big failure. But she didn't. I think we're pretty different, she said. Well, I said, they say opposites attract. Yeah, it's just. Her voice trailed off. What is it? You proposed so quickly and moved to Boston for 2 years for school. Maybe we're only getting to know each other now. Neither one of us said anything else that night. A few months later, the conversation continued. I got home from work one night to find her waiting outside the front door. I watched as she summoned up a lot of courage, through a lot of tears, to finally say, Neil, I don't know if I'm in love with you anymore. I think we should get a divorce. Her words were full of compassion and empathy and heartache, but they still sent me reeling. I suddenly felt everything around me falling away. My marriage, my home, my future kids, the failures around my first job, and my bumbling restaurant that I thought were scabbed over were suddenly raw and searing again, too. The life I thought I was living crumbled in seconds, and I was in shock. I was flailing. I was falling. What do you do when you're falling? What are you supposed to do? The first step is to add a dot, dot, dot. That means finding the strength to keep going, hanging in there, continuing to breathe. Keep your heart beating. Keep moving, even a little. Add a little dot, dot, dot. Add a yet to your thoughts and take it day by day or moment by moment. The second step is to shift the spotlight. That's harder, sure, but necessary, vital. It means separating your version of the story from the story. Remember, we tend to shine a spotlight on ourselves as though we're the center of everything. We make everything about us, but instead, we need to learn to dance with it, to place it beside us, not inside us. And the third step? The third step is to see it as a step, to see the failure you're going through as a step up an invisible staircase toward a future you and a future life you can't even imagine yet. This is hard, really hard. It has to do with trusting the process, trusting yourself, knowing you've been okay before, and believing that after losses and setbacks, things often get back on track. But if you can't see the rest of the invisible staircase, how do you trust it's there? So, I just read quite a bit. I think I read like 3 or 4 pages right there. Wow. You already know. I'm so good at reading. Anyway. So, yeah, like he said, he's talking about the 3 steps right there that basically when a big failure happens in your life, it's not as big of a failure as you may think it is. You know, we tend to, one thing bad happens to us that we may see as really bad or like, a crippling failure at the time. And, it's really not as bad as we thought it was. It's kind of like that saying, you think it's impossible until it's done. So basically, what I like about that saying is that a lot of people, and I've done this many times myself, we're looking at a goal or something and we're thinking to ourselves, like, wow, like I could never do that. Or, going to talk to somebody in public that, like, but you're all shy and stuff like, oh, I could never go up to that person and talk to them. And then when you finally do it one day, you realize it wasn't that hard in the first place. And you're just giving yourself, this mental barrier, kind of like I was talking about in the last episode. You're putting a wall up for yourself that you don't even see. And since you don't even see the wall, then you get all confused and you're like, well, why can't I do this? When in reality, you can. You have the free will to choose whatever you want to do in life, but it's how you see things that really change your world. And so, what I really like about this is, the first step, add a dot, 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 take your life and wherever you're putting a period at the end of a sentence, just keep the sentence going. Don't just stop it there like, oh, I'm not good at talking to people, dot, 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 yet. Don't just see it as, oh, I'm not good at talking to people. I'm not good at talking to people yet. Or, oh, I can't do many push ups yet. Make sure you're adding that dot, 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 and the yet, because, you can never just give up. I mean, you can, but does anybody really actually ever want to give up? That's just some more food for thought. And so, and I'm not saying any of this is easy. None of this is easy whatsoever. It's hard to admit these kind of things that, we're shifting the spotlight on ourselves and that, our failure feels so crippling and it turns into something that it never was in the first place. But you have to understand that you got to keep going. You got to be able to see, past the end of the period, past the end of the sentence, and add that dot, 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 and just keep it going. So, shifting the spotlight like I was just talking about, and to see it as a step, and to see every failure as a step, in the invisible staircase that is life. Every step you take, you're making more progress towards that future you that you can't even see yet. That future you that, you may not believe that it's there yet, but it is. You got to add the dot, dot, dot at the end of the sentence, and then, add the yet. Like I said earlier, I'm not good at talking to people yet. See what I'm saying? So you want to be able to, see past the period. And that's a really important skill to have. So basically now we're going to continue on to page 71. And the title of this is The End of History Illusion. And so basically, we're going to continue on this page. And obviously, if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments down below. And I will try to, or on the live stream, and I will try my best to answer them to the best of my ability. So now we're going to continue on page 71. Actually, I'm going to get some water first. Hold on. It's page 71. All right. The end of history illusion. Here's the thing. The staircase represents your life so far, and you can't see up the invisible staircase. Look down behind you. That part is visible. You can see where you came from. All the steps you already walked up. Oh, look, there's the time you moved in 5th grade and got bullied by that goon Adam every day after school. Remember? That's when you picked up a basketball and started practicing with Coach Williams every night. There's Francesco, the tattooed chef who chewed you out every shift you showed up late to wash dishes at the seafood place as a teen. It was painful, but you learned to be on time and you still go back for his famous crab cakes when you're in town. Oh, prom. Yikes. Remember that disaster? I guess that night helped you realize you were gay. Thank goodness your parents were so loving and supportive when you came out before going off to college. What a relief. So many steps up to today. Big steps, hard steps, but steps all the same. And what's next on the staircase? Well, that's the problem. No one knows. It's invisible. We can't see the future. And maybe if that were the only problem, that would be okay. But it isn't. It gets worse. Why? Because according to the research, we actually think we can see up that staircase. Our brains think, oh yeah, sure, I know what's next in my life. We imagine those stairs and we think we're good at imagining them. But in reality, we suck at it. Let me explain. Back in January 2013, Science magazine published a fascinating study conducted by the researchers Jordi Koidbach? Koidbach? I might have pronounced that wrong, my bad. Jordi Koidbach, Daniel T. Gilbert, and Timothy D. Wilson. They teamed up to measure the personalities, values, and preferences of more than 19,000 people aged 18 to 68. Through a series of tests, they asked the subjects about two pretty simple things: how much they thought they had changed in the past decade, and how much they would change in the next decade. They used a lot of fancy scientific methods to make sure the data were legit. Then they published their results. What happened? Academic circles started buzzing. Media outlets clamored to share the results. Why? Because the results were mind blowing. It turned out that no matter how old the respondents were, they uniformly believed that they had changed a ton in the past, but would change little in the future. What? So imagine a 30-year-old guy telling the tempestuous story of his last 10 years, but figuring his next 10 years would be smooth sailing. Imagine a 50-year-old woman talking about how everything had flip-flopped after she turned 40, but then assuming that at 60, she'd be the same person she was now. That was the case for everybody, regardless of age, gender, or personality. We all do it. We all think that the way things are now is the way things will continue to be. If you're flying high, that's maybe not a bad thing. But if you're failing, if you're broken, if you're busted, if you're heartbroken, if you're lonely, then this is a dangerous psychological tendency, and we all share it. When we're at rock bottom, we are certain that there's no way up. We think we'll never get out of our parents' basement. We think our divorce means we'll never meet someone new. We think if we've lost our jobs, we'll be scrolling online temp postings forever. The researchers called this the end of history illusion. We all think all our wild stories stop exactly now, and everything will remain unchanged from here on out. Now, why did those researchers spend so long studying 19,000 people? Daniel Gilbert, one of the researchers, went on NPR's Hidden Brain and explained, "You know, like everybody, I suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. You know, we have divorces, we have surgeries, we have breakups with women we love, and friends we enjoy. So it was sort of ordinary events that befell me all in one year. And I realized that, had you asked me a year earlier how I'd be faring, the answer would have been, oh my gosh, I'll be devastated. But I wasn't devastated, and it made me wonder if I was the only person who was just too stupid to be able to look ahead into his future and figured out how he'd feel if really bad or maybe really good things happened. Excuse me. Aha, there it is, the invisible staircase. Even Danielle Gilbert, the Daniel Gilbert, the famed Harvard psychologist and professor, the author of best-selling books such as Stumbling on Happiness, even he forgets that the rest of the staircase is invisible. He went through a flop or two and figured, well, darn, my life's gonna suck forever. But it didn't, because inevitably, everything we go through in life really is a step to help us get to a better place. It's hard to see it this way. It's so hard to see it this way, but we have to. We have to, because this left brain scratching study helps us realize we're prone to catastrophizing, and that alone should be enough to zoom backward in your brain and go, wait a minute, here, I'm tricking myself. Maybe everything won't be awful forever. Who's to say I won't get out of the basement, meet someone new, land a plum gig I love? See it as a step. Dan Gilbert ended up figuring out that when it comes to predicting the future, we're all stupid, each and every one of us. How relieving. See, you're not stupid. We're stupid. You're not an idiot. We're idiots. You're not dumb. We're all dumb. Doesn't that feel better? This research reminded me of an HR job I had where I had to escort bosses into meeting rooms whenever they had to fire an employee. I was there for paperwork. I was there for witnessing. I was there for emotional support. I was in the room when dozens of people got fired, and it was awful. There were tears and wet tissues, and many afternoons where I'd be consoling someone in a freezing parking lot as they loaded up their trunk with framed pictures from their desks saying, I thought I'd be here forever, and what am I going to do now? And I'll never find another job. Those scenes left me heartbroken. I lost a lot of sleep over them, but sometimes I'd bump into the former employees again years later. And what did they tell me? Every single time? Getting fired was the best thing that happened to me. If I hadn't gotten that severance package, I never would have had those crucial 6 months to spend with my dad before he died. Or I traveled to Peru and became a nutritional supplement importer, and I love what I'm doing now. Or I'm working at a smaller company now and I've gotten promoted twice in 2 years. Or I used my severance pay to take the time to be with my daughter and son in law in the months after her third miscarriage. Why did every fired employee tell me this? Why did they all react so positively after some time had passed? How can that happen? Because we confuse the challenge of picturing change with the improbability of change itself. We do. We confuse the challenge of picturing change, what am I going to do now, with the improbability of change. I'll never find anything. In other words, you can't picture yourself changing, so you assume you won't. Why? Because your seeing skills are shit, and so are mine, so are everyone's. You think because you can't see up the staircase, there aren't any more steps, but there are more steps, and change will come. It always does. That's why it's so hard to see change as a step, to see this failure, this flop, this difficult life experience as a part of the process, as part of a greater whole. It's hard to see it as a step because you can't see the next step, and you sure can't see 10 steps after that. Why do we always think failure leads somewhere bad? It's not true. It rarely is. Remember the end of history illusion. Our brains think this is the end. Remember all those people I met after they were fired saying how positive that jarring left turn ended up being in their lives? It's me, too. How could I have known that failing at P&G would somehow lead us to having the conversation we're having right now? I couldn't have. Believe me, I far prefer having this conversation to doing price analysis on eyeshadows and mascaras. But when I flamed out there, I pictured myself sleeping in a pile of club sandwich crusts in Cleveland. So be kind to yourself, too. When you're there, when you're stewing in the shock of failure and loss, when you're convinced you're stuck, when you're convinced there's no way forward, just remember, there's a staircase you're not seeing. Trust that it's there, right in front of you, and that it leads to exciting new places. Have the courage to believe in this one thing that you can't see. There are so many steps ahead. So many steps. Don't stop. Add a dot dot dot. Shift the spotlight and keep moving. Sure, you're going through a failure, but it's very possible and very likely that what you're going through is a step forward toward a future you'll be happy with. But you just can't see it yet. So, that is the first part of see it as a step. Um, let's see here. All right. So, essentially, what does see it as a step mean? So actually, I'm going to turn the light on real quick. It's kind of getting dark in here. Oh, that's much better. I should have done that earlier. All right. So, essentially, see it as a step means that a failure that you have, don't just let it like completely overtake you. You want to see the failure as a step towards, a brighter future or, something better. Because usually when failure happens to us, we just let it completely cripple us and we can't see anything, going forward from that. And we tend to, let these failures just completely like ruin like our entire lives really at that moment in time. Because a lot of us think that we can see the future, but the reality is we can't see the future at all, and we never will be able to. We have to understand that most times when a failure happens, everything's going to be okay in the end. Things are going to get better, but we have to trust in that process. We have to not put periods at the end of sentences and put the dot, 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 yet instead. You know, I'm not good at this, dot, 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 yet. We need to understand that, there's more to life than just that one failure that happened. We need to be able to understand that no matter the situation, we can keep moving forward, and that, you know, we can, see it as a step. So basically, what he's talking about is, basically you're going to have, failures in your life, and you're going to, experience things that you feel like you will never get past, and you think your life will be the same forever. We all do it. Just like he said, we're all idiots, we're all dumb when it comes to seeing the invisible staircase, but we have to trust that this invisible staircase is there. We have to trust the process of life. We have to trust that we can keep moving forward no matter what face of adversity is there. And most of the time, like I said earlier, we create that adversity. We create that invisible wall that we don't even see that's there. And we just completely let it just stop us from anything we're doing. But we can't be doing that. We have to realize that life will get better. Things will turn out okay. They usually always do. So we need to, think about these things you know, when we're going through hard times, especially in these trying times during this pandemic. It is really easy to just, let anything overtake you. So, what I want you to basically understand is that, or what the book wants you to understand really, is that you have to trust the process. You have to trust that it's there. So, that is the first part of see it as a step. Also, I still have 0 viewers, but that's all right. Like I said in the first episode, it could be one person watching, but I'm still gonna do this just because I really hope it could help somebody. And on the first episode, I was helping people, and that makes me really happy to see. So, um, yeah, see it as a step. See every failure as a step. Trust the process. We can't see the invisible staircase, but we have to trust that it's there. And no matter what failure happens, we can't just see it as, a complete full stop in life. We just have to keep going. So I really like that message. So now we're going to continue on page 79, which is the second part of seeing it as a step. And it's titled Go Back to the Beginning. And so, we're going to continue on that. I'm going to get a drink of water really quickly, and then we're going to continue. Also, don't forget, if you have any questions, make sure you leave them in the comments down below. And I will, do my best to answer them. And all right, so we're going to start now on page 79, and it goes like this. So, we did it. We got the divorce. With pits in our stomachs, with holes in our hearts, we put the house up for sale. We met with a family lawyer. We went to a courthouse. We processed the paperwork. We packed up our boxes, and we stumbled through the awkwardness of splitting up our furniture and carrying it out of our house with random people we had spent years turning into mothers and fathers-in-laws right as they were turning back into random people again. I moved into a tiny 500 square foot bachelor apartment downtown in a building called the Hudson. A friend helped me move my dining room table up the elevator, and we set the whole thing up before realizing it filled the whole kitchen. So we took it all apart and moved it back out. I never replaced the table. I never bought kitchen chairs. I never bought bowls or oven trays or salt and pepper shakers. My cupboards were empty. So was my fridge. So was my heart. I was embarrassed by the black bags growing under my eyes, so I bought a fancy eye cream from the drugstore down the street and started applying it under my eyes every morning. I didn't want people knowing I had been up all night suffering from intense sleeplessness, anxiety, and loneliness. For the first time in my life, I was living alone, living in a big city, with every single thing I'd hoped for by the time I was 30 washed out to sea. No marriage, no house, no kids. Back to the beginning. Most of my friends were married with kids in the suburbs, and I had 6 contacts in my cell phone. I didn't know anyone in the neighborhood and had nothing to do and nowhere to go. Over the months this was all happening, I was angry, I was sad, I was trudging to work every day. I was sitting through meetings like a zombie. I was coming home to take out dinners every night. One day as I was driving home from work, I told myself, there's got to be something positive out there. A tiny little flare, a tiny brain bolt, something to grab onto, something to listen to. I decided I had to find it, a positive thing. I just had to turn over a new leaf. I just had to change the channel. So when I got home from work, I turned on CNN. Do not do that. Every single TV station, every single newspaper, every single radio station is bad news. I'm being honest when I tell you that I don't listen to a single news channel or watch a single news show today. I have canceled all my newspaper and magazine subscriptions. I have no news sites bookmarked. I get enough from skimming headlines at the grocery store, and I willingly sacrifice knowing deeply what's going on in order to live a more content life. Can you imagine how many apartment building fires and traffic jam updates and reality TV star engagements we're both missing out on right now? No, I'm not saying you should put your fingers in your ears and scream la 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 as loud as you can when people start talking about climate change. What I'm saying is the world is full of bad news and our primal brains are desperate to read it, so our media outlets are desperate to hawk it for dollars. The solution is to be intentional about your attention. Chop all sites out, and then choose the issues you care about. Study them deeply and act accordingly. Just stop being on the receiving end of the rat-a-tat-tat machine gun barrage of superficial negativity fired at you from every elevator, television, treadmill, and radio station. So back then, I flipped off CNN and went online. I typed how to start a blog into Google and then pressed the I'm feeling lucky button that no one ever presses. 10 minutes later, I had started a tiny website called 1000awesomethings.com as a way to try to put a smile on my face before I went to bed. The writing started off very sarcastic, acerbic, cynical, reflective of the cynical way I was feeling. I wrote about how fat baseball players give us hope. I wrote about how locking people out of the car and pretending to drive away is the world's best gag. I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. Every day I'd come home from work and add another one. What about putting on warm underwear just out of the dryer, or flipping to the cold side of the pillow in the middle of the night, hitting a string of green lights when you're late for work, finally peeing after holding it in forever? The writing was cathartic, it was a release. It helped me swap dark thoughts for lighter ones right before bed. I posted every single blog post at 12:01 a.m. every day. Why was posting just before bed important? Because you know what happens when your mind is spinning. You can't sleep. And then how's the next day? Worse. And your energy and resilience levels the next night? Worse. And the night after that? Even worse. The blog was a soaking wet chamois rubbed across the dusty blackboard of my mind right before I turned out the lights. I'd be brainstorming metaphors for what it feels like to take out your contact lenses, taking your socks off after work, taking off your ski boots, taking your rented tux off after the sweaty wedding is over. So what did I go to bed thinking about? Slightly more positive thoughts. The blog was a dot dot dot. The blog was a way to shift the spotlight. The blog helped me see things as a step as I tried to just keep moving. So, those are the 3 steps that we have talked about so far: adding a dot dot dot, shifting the spotlight, and seeing it as a step. So, essentially, also thank you for the 3 likes now, I appreciate it. So, essentially, he was going through a rough time. He had a divorce happen. He felt like his life was completely falling apart. And he decided that he was going to do something that made him happy. So he made this website called, 1000awesomethings.com. And he would basically go to bed at night thinking about, some awesome things and, trying to make some metaphors and, trying to basically think more positive thoughts. And that was like his escape. And that was like his dot, 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 helped him shift the spotlight, helped him see it as a step to just keep moving forward. And this author's story is really relatable and inspiring because a lot of us in our lives basically, get to one point and we just stop. We just completely, like I said earlier, we put up an invisible wall and we just stop in our tracks. But what we need to be doing is we need to keep moving forward in the face of any adversity, even the adversity we create in our own minds subconsciously. We need to understand that, one failure is not an infinite failure. It doesn't mean that life is just over all of a sudden. It just means it's something that happened, and we can't overvalue the good or overvalue the bad, like I'm talking about. And we just need to understand that most of the time it's going to be fine. If you look back in the past and to where you are now, most of your failures have ended up fine. And so We need to understand that, we just have to keep moving forward and shift the spotlight from what we think is our perspective and add a dot, dot, dot and say, I don't feel good yet. I can't do this yet. I'm trapped. Or you can't add a yet to that one, but you get the point. So we are now on part 3 of See It As a Step, which is on page 83. Also, I've already read so many pages today. It's awesome. The stream's already 40 minutes long. So, thanks again for the 3 likes. I got 1 viewer right now. What's up, 1 viewer? And I'm going to take another drink of water, and we're going to continue on page 83. All right. Oh, what's up, JR? Also, y'all, shout out JR. He gave me some great book recommendations yesterday. Long list of books, and I actually have already either read or I have some of the books that was on his list. So y'all, if y'all ever want any book recommendations to read, definitely go hit him up, and I'll be covering a lot of the books he recommended on this series on this channel. So excuse me, definitely check that out. So with all that said, continuing on page 83, the title is Have You Had Enough One Night Stands? And it goes like this. Blogging was a step for me, a vital step, a necessary step, because every single breakup hurts. It feels like the end. It feels like game over. My divorce felt that way to me, but it turns out that when you actually sit down with people in committed relationships and ask them to go backward, they always paint the road as a series of game overs that always, always, always continued. A few years ago, I stumbled upon a fascinating study published in The Telegraph. A team of researchers was trying to figure out just how rocky the royal road to romance is, so they found people in deeply committed relationships with life partners and worked backward through their personal histories to see just how many relationships and sexual experiences had led them to where they were right then. Side note, what a bizarre research study. So who did you date before Frank? Joe. How long were you with Joe? Did you cheat on Joe? Any one-night stands between Joe and Frank? And yes, this assumes you're dating the Hardy Boys. But it makes sense, right? Because everyone we kiss and everyone we date and everyone we sleep with shows us and grows and teaches us and enlightens us and helps us to continue down our lifelong journeys to understanding ourselves a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better until we ultimately become the richest, fullest, deepest versions of ourselves possible. In that sense, every single breakup has a purpose. Every single breakup is a step. Shall we get specific? According to that study, the average woman will kiss 15 people, have 7 sexual partners, 4 one-night stands, 4 disaster dates, 3 relationships that last less than a year, and 2 relationships that last more than a year, fall in love twice, be heartbroken twice, cheat once, and be cheated on once, all before she finds a lifelong partner. Whew! What about men? Well, the average man will kiss 16 people, have 10 sexual partners, 6 one-night stands, 4 disaster dates, 4 relationships that last less than a year, and 2 relationships that last more than a year. Fall in love twice, be heartbroken twice, cheat once, and be cheated on once, all before he finds a lifelong partner. Does that sound like something you want to go through? Me neither. But in a way, isn't it also relieving to hear? Because it may help shine a light on the invisible steps ahead of you on the staircase you're climbing on the way to the long-term, committed relationship you may desire. I'm not saying it's easy. When I was living alone, it took me more than a year before I started going out on first dates again. And when I finally did, I was completely crushed when somebody I felt a little connection with or who I shared a first kiss with didn't text me back. I was fragile. I was heartbroken. The rejection destroyed me. I became friends with a young gay guy who lived across the hall. He always had guys going in and out of his apartment. When I would tell him how shattered I was about someone not texting me back, he'd always have a huge smile pasted across his face and say the same thing. Next! His words felt sharp, but maybe he was just better than I was at getting to the future faster. So that is the end of part 3 of See It As a Step. And basically, that is more talking about basically another example of obviously seeing it as a step, like towards relationships specifically. Basically, a lot of people, you hear about it all the time, you hear about love and relationships all the time. And, it's like really like glorified in today's world and really like basically everybody wants it. All you hear on the radio is, songs about love, or all you ever hear anybody talk about is, oh, I want a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatever. I want to get married and settle down. And, this part of the book is basically saying there is a long road that, comes with that and before that. And that, you're not just going to find the one and that's going to be that easy. You're going to go through many people, most likely, according to the studies. And, it's a normal thing for that to happen, basically. And that, it helps to see it as a step, like he was saying in his life, that breakup, that divorce that happened to him. He saw it as a step to his future. And so he decided that he's just going to keep moving forward with life and he's not going to let that stop him. And, he might have been fragile and he might have been, having a lot of sleepless nights, but he decided, I'm going to keep moving forward in the face of adversity. And that's basically what the whole book is about: resilience, moving forward in the face of adversity, breaking down that invisible wall and understanding it was never there in the first place and that we put it there. And, if more of us could admit, that we're putting that wall there in our lives, we could really move forward and be more at peace. But, that's really inspiring to hear that, because the author's showing like he's not some perfect person that basically has like everything. He's not some perfect person that he's mastered resilience and he's, become the best version of himself, and you should too. No, he's telling you about his hardships and hopefully that, you can relate to them, and that, at the end of the day, we're all human and we're all going to do these things. We're all going to make these mistakes. But when we make the mistakes, maybe we can make them less often. Maybe, we can remember these lessons that we've learned throughout life through resilience, through, not overvaluing the good or bad, to, not just adding a period at the end of everything that happens, to add a dot, 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 and a yet. I'm not good at this yet. I can't do this yet. So I really like what the author had to say right there, because definitely is very relatable, because, everybody wants love. It's really glorified, and, it's definitely, I'm glad he put that in here, because a lot more people need to, hear these kind of things, that we're all human and that, we're going to go through these hardships. What is up, Blair? How are you doing? So now we're going to continue on part 4 of See It As a Step. It's called What is a Blog, on page 87. Also, crazy thing, like we're already 40 minutes or 48 minutes into the stream. Look at how far we are through the book. We're almost halfway through this book, man. Like, that was quick. Only took 2 episodes. Like, that's pretty awesome. But I'm really hoping that this is going to help some of you. If you're watching, like I said, if you're watching this in the future, after it's already posted, if you have any recommendations, anything, any thoughts, anything, like even, negative thoughts, people in the comments, maybe people can, go and help each other. Maybe they can, make each other see, a different perspective on certain things. I think that'd be really beautiful. I don't know if that'll ever happen or if I'll ever get enough comments for that, but I think that'd be really cool. Also, thank you for the 4 likes, everybody. So before I start on page 87, I'm going to get another drink of water. Also, thank you for the 5 likes, everybody. Blair, I'm doing well, thanks. What about you? You loving the book? It sounds good to me. Yeah, I am very much loving this book. It is a very good book. I recommend people get it. By the way, if you guys don't know what I'm reading, Neil Pasricha, You Are Awesome. It is the #1 international bestseller. That is the book right there. That is the back of it. You can pause it if you want to read the back part of it. Obviously, in the future, you can't pause right now because it's a live stream, but very good book. I recommend it to anybody that feels stuck in life any um, or any part of their life right now has a negative connotation attached to it. Anyway, we're going to start on page 87. It's the fourth part of See It as a Step. We're already 50 minutes into the stream. Thanks for the 5 likes yet again. And we're going to start. What is a blog? It goes like this. I wrote a blog post every night for a year. I worked my office job during the day, then picked up takeout on my way home and went online till the wee hours of the morning before going to bed. I was grieving and I was reeling and I was processing, and since I was by myself, I didn't have anyone to help me flick the off switch. First date after first date went nowhere. I started piling up the failures. I called the person I was out with my ex-wife's name several times to several different people. I kept waiting for a slow and dreamy date to happen, full of long conversations, deep knowing smiles, and telling waitress after waitress, sorry, we haven't even looked at the menus yet. But it never came. I felt like I was living a Groundhog Day full of handshakes, hugs, and $40 bills for wine and fries. Another year went by, and I was doing the same things, blogging every night, getting introduced to people, meeting friends of friends, and having drinks with people I met online. One night, my friend Rita, who lived down the hall, came over to ask if I wanted to check out an art exhibit across the street. She came over a lot to see if I wanted to grab a drink or snack, but this time she brought a friend. Hi, I'm Leslie. A stunning brunette with a giant smile and sunbeaming confidence said with an outstretched hand. Oh, hey, hi, I'm Neil, I managed. We walked across the street and roamed through a great photography exhibit before grabbing a glass of wine and a plate of fries at a French bistro. So Neil's a blogger, Rita said. Maybe you've heard of his blog? He's been at it a while. It's one of the biggest in the country now. They're turning it into a book called The Book of Awesome. What's a blog? Leslie asked, and I was hooked. Later that night, when Rita emailed both of us a link to the photographer whose exhibit we'd seen, I reached back out to Leslie asking her out on a date. How about Tuesday at 10 p.m., I emailed, or Wednesday night at 9 p.m.? Sorry, she replied. I go to bed at 8 p.m. I'm a kindergarten teacher. Well, how about Sunday breakfast then, I asked. Sounds great, she replied, and it was set. So, that was actually only 1 page long. That part was only literally 1 page long. Um, so I'm just going to cover it really quickly since it wasn't that much information. Basically, a good part in his life is happening again. He met, for the past year, he's been meeting people, moving forward in life, like the whole message of the book. And now he finally, is meeting a girl again. And, he's, basically he's really excited basically and giddy that he's met a girl again. And at this point, that blog he's been doing for about a year, like it says here, he's been at it a while. It's one of the biggest in the country now. They're turning it into a book called The Book of Awesome. And actually, I have this book and the other book called The Book of Awesome. I have both of the books. So if you want to see me, cover that book and, talk about it on the stream and in the episodes, let me know, because honestly, I'll gladly go over it. I haven't really read too much of it. I read a little bit of it so far, and it's basically just talking about awesome things or like good things, like, putting on the covers at night, stuff like that, feeling, fresh laundry, like right when it comes out of the dryer, because you know how the laundry's hot when it comes right out of the dryer, and, it can be really comfortable to like wear it and whatnot. Basically, it's just a book about, a bunch of good things like that, or good, experiences that you can have in life. And I picked up that book because I like it, and it gives me inspiration, and just think about positive things. And, that's kind of how I try to live my life, to just think about as many possible things or positive things as I can every day. See if anybody commented. No? All right. So thanks again for the 5 likes now. I don't know if I already said that. And so now we're going to continue on page 89, which is part 5 of the See It as a Step secret. So part 5 Here we are. It's called Soak It Up, and there's two illustrations here that I'm going to read about right now. And it goes like this. Soak it up. A long, long, long time ago, tiny single-celled organisms appeared on Earth. For example, an amoeba, like this. And then what happened? Well, 300 million years later, those single-celled organisms evolved into multi-celled organisms, like this. I hope you could see that. Then what happened? Well, 300 million years after that, those multi-celled organisms evolved into plants and animals, like us. And you know what's interesting about this? Single-celled organisms never went away. They didn't die off. They weren't rendered obsolete. Plants, animals, and our own bodies have hundreds of millions of single-celled organisms living on us and inside us. Our body is their home. What about multi-celled organisms? Well, importantly, they are built of single-celled organisms. And, also importantly, they didn't die off but rather became part of newer, greater wholes. There are multi-celled organisms in trees, in you, in me, in Oprah. What's my point? What we often think of as evolution, destroying and replacing the past, is actually transcending and including. The past gets soaked up to create the future. The author Ken Wilber has put this idea forward in numerous books, such as A Brief History of Everything. Cities didn't wipe out farms, but rather incorporated farming in a more efficient and productive way. Movies didn't replace photography. Trip hop didn't replace hip hop. We didn't replace gorillas. Our evolved rational thinking didn't replace emotions, but rather sponged up those emotions into our newly evolved rational brains. Real growth, real evolution, doesn't come about through destruction. It comes from taking what came before and integrating it into a greater whole. What comes from burning libraries, piles of ash, and what comes from reading the books and developing your own ideas? Pretty much all great thinking. What comes from raising towns, piles of ash, and what comes from studying other countries' technology and copying it and learning from it? China. No, just kidding. I mean all future technologies. There's no ride hailing without GPS. There's no Siri without search. There's no you of today without everything in your past. There's no you of tomorrow without everything you're going through now, either. If my first wife hadn't fallen out of love with me, I wouldn't have moved to a bachelor apartment in the Hudson. I would never have met a girl down the hall named Rita. I would never have fallen in love with her friend Leslie. I would never have moved in with Leslie a year later. And I would have never have proposed to her a year after that. I would have never gotten married to her. And I would have never had a son with her named Hudson. I didn't know it at the time, but I had soaked up the past and it created my future. And that didn't just happen to me. It happens to all of us. It happens to you. It happens to me. It happens to us. As you're falling, you can add a dot 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 to keep going. Then shift the spotlight so you aren't blaming yourself. And then finally try to see it as a step. And so that, my friends, concludes See It as a Step. So, oh, it looks like I just got a comment right there. I don't believe in evolution, but I get the idea of integrating circumstances into your life and your future. He didn't mean like, what you call it. Because obviously, I'm not going to really delve into that topic, but basically, like, we have evolved over time, which is undeniable. And that was the point that he was making, that we have evolved over time. What you call it? That was basically the point he was making. And, evolution, he was basically just saying evolution doesn't come without something before it, if that makes sense, or like a reason to change, basically. Sorry, something's like, my eyes are dry. I'm gonna get some water, actually. But yeah, I'm glad you get the idea of integrating circumstances into your life and your future. I'm glad you get that. So let's see here. It's crazy. We're already halfway through this book, and the stream's already 60 minutes, which means it's an hour long already. So the last stream I did was about an hour 25 long. Um, excuse me. So with today's stream and tomorrow's stream, if I do it again tomorrow, I'm not sure. Depends on, how many people are feeling it, and if I'm feeling it. But basically, um, just to cover the whole thing, seeing it as a step just means that you're gonna have failure in your life, obviously, and things are going to be hurdles, and you have to see them as hurdles. You have to see them. It's almost like life is like an obstacle course, right? And you're either dodging certain things, grabbing onto a rope and swinging, and going through the obstacles basically, and realizing that they're just obstacles in a long path, and you don't have to, um, actually, I don't know where I was going with that, but basically the point is that the path doesn't just end. You can keep it going, and a lot of the time when we have a failure happen in our lives, or like what we consider a great failure, we tend to not see the path that's ahead of us. That's basically what I was trying to say. And so essentially, with the author's hardships, you know, he didn't see the dot 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 at first. He didn't shift the spotlight, and he didn't see it as a step at first. He got a divorce with his wife that he thought he was going to be with forever and have kids with, and just live a happy, merry life forever. But that didn't end up happening, and it crippled him for a minute. Then he got back up. He added a dot dot dot. He went, I'm not happy yet. You know, I can't do this or I can't do this yet. Stuff like that. He added the dot dot dot. He shifted the spotlight away from himself and shifted it onto just moving forward and going through life no matter what happened. And he saw that failure as a step towards, a better, brighter future. And so, you know, it's really goes along with the book's whole idea of trying to handle failure and developing that resilience basically. So far we have went over 3 chapters or 3 secrets, which are right there, and I really resonate with all 3 of those messages. But now we're going to be moving on to secret number 4. Tell yourself a different story. This seems very interesting, and I'm very hyped to read into telling yourself a different story. This is going to be very interesting. I touched on a passage where I had my sticky note yesterday on telling yourself a different story, but that was only me touching on it. Now I'm actually gonna cover the whole secret. I don't know if I'm gonna get through the entire thing today. I'll try to get through as much as I can. Let's see. I'm gonna see how long it is really quickly. It's decently long. We'll see. We'll see. I think I just got a comment though. Let's see. What do you think of the ideas like you need to control your own destiny, as opposed to these ideas like see whatever's going on as a step to something that's better? It's kind of hard to answer that because a lot of people see destiny differently. Some people see it as, um, basically that life is already pre-planned, and then others see it as you have the free will to basically choose whatever you want to do, and that will basically be your destiny. I'm not really sure what I believe. I definitely know that I have free will to do basically, like I said in yesterday's episode, you know, you have the free will to do literally anything you want right now. And like in yesterday's episode, I said I can't fly, but I can make a machine that'll bring me into the air. So you can literally do anything you want in life, like wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you can do whatever you want, right? And so what I think is that the free will that you have and the choices that you decide to make puts you at a certain place in life, and that is where you are at that given point in time. And over time, you're obviously going to be in different parts, different places, whether that means you're doing really good, you're doing really bad, or anything like that. I don't think there's some crazy plan. I think, that's kind of goes back to what the author was saying, where he was saying, none of us can see the future. None of us can see, the invisible staircase. We suck. We're all stupid when it comes to seeing the future because we literally cannot. We think we can, and then, things happen differently than what we thought. And so basically, um, that's kind of like what the author was saying, in that, there's an invisible staircase, and to keep moving forward in the face of adversity, we have to trust the process and believe that it's there. So essentially, with your question, um, I really like these ideas, in knowing that you have the free will to make the choices, whatever choice that you want to make, and basically that will put you where you are in life. And that's what I think, basically. So, with all that being said, I think I'm gonna start on secret number 4. Tell yourself a different story. And I'm actually hyped because this is seems like a really good sentiment in the book that I really resonate with, because I've seen a lot of people that do this, and I've done this myself. Good analogy of being able to fly versus making a machine to do it. I'm a pilot. Hey, nice. So that probably made perfect sense to you then. All right, so we're at 66 minutes. All right, we're going to keep it going. Page 97. I'm actually going to get a drink of water first because my throat is so dry. I've just been talking. I mean, I started with a full water bottle. Also, we got 4 people watching now. That's the most that's been watching this entire stream. What's up, everybody? How you doing? All right, so secret number 4, page 97. Tell yourself a different story. It goes like this. So, I fell, you fell, we fell, now we're here. We talked about the 3 steps you can take when the rug gets yanked from under you, when you slip up and trip up and feel like you're falling, 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 falling. I hope those 3 steps helped. Maybe you didn't hit bottom. Maybe you're back up already. Maybe you're good. But we all fall all the way down dark holes sometimes too. Sometimes we really are at the bottom. That's where we come face to face with our innermost demons, our private fears, our guilty thoughts, our darkest secrets. That's when we feel like we're at the bottom of a well. We can see the pinprick of light way above us, but our hands keep slipping on rocks covered in wet moss as we try to climb up the sides. Then what do? Let's talk about the next secret. Let's get a little more intimate. Let's go back in time. It was October 1979. I was 6 weeks old and I had never stopped crying. When I say I never stopped crying, I mean I cried all day and I cried all night. My parents had no other kids yet, but they knew something was wrong. They kept taking me to the doctor, but the advice was always the same. Don't worry, go home. That's just what babies do. My mom was convinced there was an issue, so she took me to a different doctor who discovered I had a painful hernia in an undescended testicle. I was sent for immediate surgery. Will he be okay? My mom asked the doctor before sitting in the waiting room and crying for hours while my screaming 6-week-old body went under the knife. I can't imagine how it would feel watching your baby taken in for surgery on his genitals in that emotionally vulnerable time a few weeks after giving birth to him. And I can't imagine what it would feel like for the baby either, since I have no conscious memories of it. When I came out of the operating room, I apparently had no tears and no long-term issues, other than having only one testicle and a scar up my groin that would grow as I did. And because I was 6 weeks old, I never knew that it happened. My parents never mentioned it when I was a little kid, so I grew into a 10-year-old who thought all guys only had one ball. Why? Well, we have one nose, one mouth, one heart, one stomach, one belly button, one penis. There's a single digit streak running straight down the middle of our bodies. And as I think about it today, don't you think the human body is a bit strange with with what it backs up with a second version and what it doesn't. Eyeballs. Sure, you're gonna need two of those. Get stabbed with a chopstick at a Chinese buffet brawl and you need seeing insurance. I get that. Nostrils? Two. Definitely two. Get a cold and you need to breathe without your tongue hanging out like a golden retriever's. Two lungs, two nipples, two kidneys? Check, check, check. But tongue, windpipe, stomach, heart? Oh, one sounds totally fine. So I thought my one ball was totally fine. I lived without thinking about it in any way. Remember, I grew up in the 80s. There was no internet. Ken dolls had no genitals. Cabbage Patch Kids had no genitals. He-Man had no genitals. Though I bet he would have had huge balls if Maddle hadn't neutered him. Think about it. The man rode a Black Panther like a carnival donkey. Underwear models and Sears naked men, which I found one day in a copy of The Joy of Sex in a storage box in my basement, didn't have the testicular detail you might imagine. Also, I wasn't looking. I wasn't looking at naked men anywhere except in the mirror, so everything made sense to me. That all changed in ninth grade gym class. In ninth grade, I went to a large high school with a clear pecking order. Ninth graders were puny, had the worst lockers, and never got a table in the cafeteria. There wasn't a ton of pushing and shoving, but you knew your place and kept your head down. Gym class was mandatory, and I was assigned to the class taught by Mr. Christopoulos, a squat Greek caveman bodybuilder with short, curly hair, a unibrow, and a thick blanket of fur on his forearms. The man wore red Umbro shorts, a white t-shirt, and a whistle every single day. Even in the dead of winter, he never smiled and was intimidating as hell. He might as well have ridden a Black Panther to class. My gym class was made up of assorted 14-year-old nerds, hooligans, and punks. But nobody stepped out of line in his class. As if to cement his reputation, on our very first day, Mr. Christopoulos took our class to the weight room, where he invited us to show him what we could do. Any of you bench press? Go for it. See what you got. A few kids took him up on it, lifting the bar or adding a few weights. After everyone was done, Mr. Christopoulos lay on the bench himself and then kept ordering kids to add more weights until he was yelling, sweating, and lifting 3 plates on each side, over 300 pounds, while thick, green, rivery veins bulged out of his arms and forehead. We stood in a circle around him with our jaws dropped and our eyes popped like we were watching Bigfoot give birth in a forest. The message was clear. The man would snap us like an Olive Garden breadstick if we so much as threw a paper airplane. We fell into line. Later in the fall, after a few weeks of weight training, track and field, and volleyball, it was time for health class. Mr. Christopoulos took us to the music room and sat on the wooden conductor's stage at the front, while the rest of us tilted cold metal music stands into desks and tried our best not to snicker when he started his straight from the textbook sermon on menstruation, herpes, and AIDS. Mr. Christopoulos was prone to lengthy asides where he'd wistfully tell stories about his days winning some European bodybuilding competition or pounding someone in a big wrestling tournament. Over time, our fear of him grew into a healthy respect, and we started seeing him as the brawny big brother we all wished we had. One day, Mr. Christopoulos started in on a story about how he was wrestling with a friend at a tournament when he had somehow managed to squash the other guy's testicle, like he eventually popped the thing. The whole class erupted in deep groans and winces while Mr. Christopoulos just smiled silently, surveying the room, waiting for the noise to die down before delivering his big punchline. Yeah, he said, commanding every single eyeball for the big follow-up. After that, we called him half a man. Everyone burst out laughing. The sound was deafening. I was sitting beside a tall, buzz-cut blonde kid named Jordan, who was my best friend in the class. He was slapping his music stand, nearly crying he was laughing so hard. Half a man, he screamed. Kids had tears running down their cheeks at the 1-2 combination of the stomach-churning story followed by Mr. Christopoulos dropping his best joke of the semester. I looked around the room and everyone was slapping their knees and tilting their heads backward while tears sprinklered off their faces. And that's how I found out I had one ball while every other guy had two. I mean, it suddenly all made sense. I'd always felt confused when guys said, "It hit me in the balls." Why balls when there was only one? I thought it was just a weird figure of speech. The same way wrestling announcers say, he got nailed in the breadbasket, or how people say, I'm so hungry I could eat a horse, or whatever. A stunning surge of feelings flash flooded my body. My innocent childlike acceptance of my body disappeared in a second. I suddenly had a physical problem. A big one, right in the very spot where guys don't want problems. It wasn't like I had flat feet or a weird birthmark on my back shaped like Japan. I was missing a ball. I might grow up and have a high pitched voice. I couldn't play contact sports. I might never have kids. According to my teacher and my friends, I was half a man. I switched from tidy whities to baggy boxer shorts. I carried a new dread with me every time I went to gym class. I changed facing the corner of the locker room. When the internet was just starting up, one of the first things I yahooed was testicular implants. I discovered a world of guys who had had metal, marble, or silicone gel packs surgically implanted in their ball sacks for cosmetic reasons. Can you imagine? I mean, first of all, ball sacks aren't generally on display, so nobody sees them except a couple of dudes in the locker room and, the love of your life. Yet, this is what we do. We take what's invisible to others and shine spotlights on it inside our own minds. That invisible feeling becomes the entire object of our internal focus, and it makes us stop thinking straight and seeing straight. Half a man. It played over and over like a bad song in my mind. It felt like a sharply intense liquid was soaking into my skin. I felt like a dry sponge dropped into a murky pond, quickly filling up with cold, cloudy, dirty water from all sides, all at once. It took me a while to figure out the word for the emotion I was feeling. It was new, terrible, and dark, and it wasn't quite as simple as guilt or embarrassment or fear. It was something bigger, wider, deeper. It was shame. So, that was basically the prologue to secret number 4, Tell Yourself a Different Story, where he's basically the author's talking about he has only one ball and, everybody else had two. And he was realizing that basically, um, that there was something essentially, you know, wrong with him. And so basically, the point that he was trying to make here is that he, just by being born, basically had been put in the face of adversity by only having one ball. And, obviously, with the title of this secret being Tell Yourself a Different Story, he's going to most likely elaborate on how, flipping the script and, not saying, instead of saying, like, because I kind of touched on it yesterday, in the last episode. I basically touched on the passage that says, I have one ball is a lot different from I'm disfigured with no chance of mating. And basically, we tell ourselves a story a lot of the time that we have made up in our own heads, in our own perception basically. And that is basically the point that he's going to try to make with this secret. To be honest, though, I'm getting kind of tired. And, the stream's already been going on for, an hour. So I think I'm going to probably read um, one more part of secret number 4, Tell Yourself a Different Story. And then, go spend some time with my mom or something. Oh, okay, it's only one page long. So that was the prologue to secret number 4, Tell Yourself a Different Story. And then I'm going to read part 1, which is only one page. And then, we'll continue on part 2 in the next live stream, whether that be, tomorrow or the next day. We'll see, we'll see how much support this stream gets. And, we'll see. And we'll see basically how I'm feeling, obviously. So, also thank you to 2 people who've been watching. I assume that's JR and Blair. So thank you guys for watching still. And we're going to continue on part 1, The Swamplands of the Soul, which is on page 105. So it goes like this. There's a gremlin waiting for us in cold, murky ponds. The shame gremlin. Shame is at the root of so many stories we tell ourselves. But what is shame? The Oxford English Dictionary calls shame a painful feeling of humiliation or distress caused by the consciousness of wrong or foolish behavior. No. Sorry, Oxford eggheads, but that's far too narrow. Time to go back to school and polish that up. Maybe get a degree from Cambridge or someplace. Because, first off, it's not just humiliation or distress, and it's also not always caused by wrong or foolish behavior, right? Shame can be caused by wetting the bed or not feeling skinny enough or walking away from a fight outside the bars. We can't say that is wrong or foolish behavior. Can we find something better? What if we ditch the dictionary? Carl Jung once called shame the swamplands of the soul. Swamplands of the soul. There it is. Much better. Swamplands of the soul doesn't easily fit into a dictionary, but it works because shame is really so many emotions stewed into a big pot. Humiliation, distress, worry, embarrassment, guilt, loneliness, and probably others we can't even articulate. No wonder it's so hard to talk about. That little smiley faced emoji with the red, blushing cheeks is nowhere near complex enough to capture the swamplands of the soul, the dread in our chests, the murky water soaking us into or the murky water soaking into us that is so difficult to swim through. The researcher and author Brene Brown calls shame the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Something we've experienced, done, or failed to do makes us unworthy of connection. We're getting even closer now. Can you expand on that, Brene? When you walk up to that arena and you put your hand on the door and you think, I'm going in and I'm going to try this, shame is the gremlin who says, uh, uh, you're not good enough. You never finished that MBA. Your wife left you. I know those things that happened to you growing up. I know you don't think that you're pretty, smart, talented, or powerful enough. I know your dad never paid attention, even when you made CFO. Shame is that thing. Swamplands of the soul, indeed. So, that finishes off part one of um, Tell Yourself a Different Story, which is secret number 4. Tell yourself a different story. That finishes up on part one and puts us at page 107 now, with the title being Who's Really to Blame in the Shame Game. We are like almost exactly halfway through the book now. I don't know if this is a better perspective on that, but also thank you for the 6 likes now. But sorry, I'm getting like real tired. It's pretty dark outside now. But essentially, he is just talking about right now basically the lead up to telling yourself a different story, and because the author in this book likes to give his own personal experiences, and then he kind of leads up into the point that he's trying to make so that the reader can relate to his story and possibly excuse me, it'll make more sense to them and they'll keep reading because they can relate to it. And so basically, he felt shame because he had only one ball, one testicle. And, he felt shame, which he called, swamplands of the soul. And this is going to lead up into him making the point of, you got to tell yourself a different story. So today um, we covered See It as a Step, and we covered part of Tell Yourself a Different Story. Keyless, I'll make sure to watch this later. All right, thank you. I appreciate that, Keyless. Wrong with him or different with him? Oh, wrong with him because he felt like ashamed, basically. He felt, something was wrong with him, and he felt a lot of shame because he only had one ball. And basically, anyway, we covered See It as a Step, and essentially, See It as a Step is just when failure happens in your life, when something cripples you, you got to see it as a step, because there is an invisible staircase. You can watch back in this episode. I elaborated on it more when I was more awake and not as tired. But there's an invisible staircase that we can't see, and we're going up that staircase, throughout the course of life. And basically, sometimes we only just see like a plateau. Basically, we don't see that staircase, and we try to predict the future, and we think everything's just going to stay the same way as it is now, especially in the face of adversity, when something cripples us, any kind of failure. And so basically, this staircase, we can't even see it, but we have to trust that it's there. So we have to essentially trust the process. In life, a failure is going to happen, but we have to understand that it's not just a period. That's not the end of the sentence. We got to add that dot, 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 and add a yet after. I can't do this yet. Um, you know, I don't feel so good yet. Stuff like that, basically. And so, we got to see it as a step. When a failure happens, see it as a step, because usually if you look back in, your past, everything worked out pretty much okay most of the time to get you to where you are right now. So essentially, you just have to instead see it as a step and keep moving forward. And so, I feel like this message can resonate with a lot of people, especially during these trying times, because you can see this as a step, the pandemic, having to stay inside, not being able to see certain friends or family. Maybe you got to, read a book that you are working on, or finish a project that you are working on, or, do certain things you were putting off, all because, pandemic happened. See it as a step, right? So essentially, that's what see it as a step means. I would talk about it more, but like I said, I'm getting pretty tired right now. I did do the stream kind of late, and also I recorded a episode of 50 pull-ups today, so be ready for that tomorrow. I'm gonna edit it tonight. I'm actually really hyped for this episode that's gonna come out. But having said that, I hope that this stream really does help a lot of people, or this series in general. Like I said, I'm gonna put it in a playlist. I've actually already made a playlist. It's called Motivation with Me. It's gonna have every single episode in it, and you can just watch it back. Same thing with 50 pull-ups. I have a playlist. Go on my channel, go to playlists. You can watch all the episodes and just watch them chronologically, and they'll keep playing. You don't have to click on each one because it's in the playlist. But basically, that is what I've covered of this book today. Neil Pasricha, You Are Awesome, the #1 bestseller in New York Times, I believe. Million or so copies. Apparently, there's over 1 million of these sold, it says right here, as you can see. This is the back of the book. This author, I really like his perspective on things. I really like, his thoughts and his outlook, and how he basically had to go through a ton of adversity in his life to be able to get to where he is now. I really resonate with that, because we all go through tough times and we all go through failure. But at the end of the day, it's not the failure that defines you. It's how you get back up that defines you. You know what I'm saying? Choices that you make. And that doesn't have to define you either. Just get back up and keep moving forward in life, because that's all you can do. You can't move backwards, so you can only move forward. And so, the beauty of that is that, you just got to keep getting back up, like one of those clown punching bag things. So I hope that this series ends up helping a lot of people if you feel stuck in life, or if you just want some motivation in general. If you are watching this in the future and it's already posted, leave a comment down below of books I should cover, positive thoughts, a quote. I could even spend one episode, right, or multiple episodes just talking about a single quote, because some quotes are so powerful. You can just talk about them for hours, because either the message really resonates with you or you really believe in it. Because when you believe in something, the delivery of how you say it is so much different. That's something my mom said to me the other day. When you believe in something, the delivery is different. So essentially, I hope this helps people, like I said. But I am getting tired, so I'm gonna shut off the stream for now. I hope you enjoyed watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe for more. And if you want to see another stream like this, definitely comment when it comes out. It'll probably be out tomorrow, because YouTube takes a while to actually post the streams when they come out. So definitely stay tuned for this stream when it comes out. If you go to my channel though, and you go to like the main page, I believe it'll be there, but I don't think it'll be there like for everyone because it'll still be processing. It's like a weird YouTube thing. I don't really understand it myself, but if you see it, you can watch it back. It'll also be in the playlist, so I don't know if it'll really fully load and be in the playlist or not right after this. So we'll have to see. But I hope you're excited for episode 3 whenever it comes out. If you want it to come out, show as much support as you can on this video. This is the book, You Are Awesome by Neil Pasricha. This has been the Real PBJ Motivation with Me, episode 2. I see we got 2 comments. Thanks for episode 2. Episode 2, very cool. Thank you guys so much for watching. As I usually say, stay jacked, and I will see you in the next one. Peace, my friends.